Hello and welcome to another episode of our short webinar series. This time the topic is about our calculated columns and how you can turn every SharePoint list column or library column into a calculated column. As usual, we will have a recording about this webinar and we will send it to you afterwards. And if you have any questions, just either raise your hand and we can unmute you or use our chat to answer the questions in the at the end of this webinar. So quickly about me, today speaking is Matthias Walter. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Skybow, and yeah, you can reach me via email, LinkedIn or Twitter all the time. If you have any question, just reach out to me. Then I also want to already promote our next webinar. It's about forms styling, how you can make your forms look pretty. So if you like to join this webinar on March 7th, just scan this QR code, or we will also link that afterwards in the recording. Good. Cool. Then about the actual topic, calculated columns. Yeah, as I already mentioned in the beginning, you can turn every column into a calculated column using Skybow Solution Studio, and it doesn't matter what field type it is. Like in out of the box, you have these calculated columns, which are a bit limited, so to say. You can only choose a couple of field types for the calculation, and only some fields can be calculated. And within Skybow you have a couple of options. One thing, and that was already what I showed you in a previous webinar, which is also linked here, it's the possibility to make the calculation in the form itself. So using our calculation expression inside the form, you can watch the video that I've linked here from my previous webinar. But today's topic is about our background calculation, which means they're really calculated in the background, and it doesn't matter if you use a form to add or edit an item. You can upload files via drag and drop, and all the columns or the calculations are done automatically in the background. And we have three types of these calculation. One is the expression-based calculation, which is basically what you know probably from the out-of-the-box possibilities, but just, I would say, much more powerful, because we're using here an expression language which is based on JavaScript, and you can not just access field values from the current list, so you can really do any complexity, whether simple calculations but also very complex ones, query other list values, etc., etc. And the other two things we have is metadata inheritance, and that's what we use a lot when you have this master detail relation. So you have a master list and you have a sub list, and you want to automatically inherit the metadata from the main list or the master list down to the sub items. And every time you change the metadata on the master list, all the sub list items should automatically get updated with the actually with the changed value. So that's what is meant by metadata inheritance. And the other way around is aggregation. Let's say you have a sublist with items in there, and on the main list, on the master list, you want to have the amount of sub-items or the sum of a number field in a sub-item to sum the values from the sub-items up into the master item, then you can use the aggregation. And both of them really work vice versa. So if you, for example, in the aggregation, if you add a sub-item, it's automatically calculating the value on the master item again. You delete a sub-item, you change the sub-item, it always recalculates the value. So that's the benefit of these two things. Another option you would have, but it's only for, I would say, for the expression-based calculation, is you could also use triggered action, which we have in the background. You can execute actions on add, on update list items, and then you could simply use an update list item action, so the action type update list item, but this is not useful for these two, for metadata inheritance and aggregation. But if you want to calculate something on adding or updating, then you can also theoretically take this way. And yeah, it's up to you what you're going to choose. Sometimes this is much easier, yeah, to have an overview of what is calculated or not, but I will show you right afterwards. Yeah, last but not least, if you have calculated columns like this in the background, then make sure to whether hide or disable them on the forms, because yeah, if the user is able to change that field and it's always getting overwritten in the background, then yeah, that can be confusing and it doesn't make sense neither. So just as a quick hint here. Yeah, so let's have a look into basically these three calculation options. Let's jump right into the demo. Therefore, I'm using our well-known expense demo I've used in previous webinars, because the expense demo is, or the expense case is exactly this master detail relation. So if we look at one of these requests, we can see that each request, let's take this one here, that's my master item, and I have sub items down here. In this case, it's a document library, so my receipts are actually documents, so the scans, and I have some metadata down here. And first of all, the first thing to show here is the calculate expression, which is inside of the list receipts. But let's start from the beginning. Let me create a new expense request like this. Everything is pre-populated. Just for demo purposes, I will take myself that Sebastian will not receive an email. Okay. Down here, I will use my where is my desktop here? Demo. So I will simply drag a file here and it shows the form. Now this would be the way how it's done in the form itself. So you choose what it is. It was a dinner or I don't know, 30 and then you would say save. Maybe one more just to have the here right to Zurich so that I can take a different one. This time I'm going to take kilometer allowance. Right. Zurich. So this were 50 kilometers and 0.5 allowance. This time I'm selecting paid via credit card, and you see that's the in-form calculation, and I disabled it because yeah, it's calculated, you're not able to change it, but I want to show that to the user. And in the backend, I also have a calculation on that field, which is on the server side, so in the background. And the only reason why I'm doing it also in the background is if you make, let's say you're going to the receipt list and you do some mass changes, so in the grid mode view, for example, then there is no form. So this field here wouldn't be calculated anymore. So I'm doing it like in the form, but also in the background once again. So now it's just in the form, and if I hit save, it will also calculate it in the background. So I will show you how this works in the background. And what I've just mentioned before is if I go to my receipt list in the background, maybe that's, you go to that library and you go inside here. Those are my two files, and maybe you're going here in the grid mode and I'm changing here from 50 to, I don't know, 60. Now, since I don't have a form, you see the total is not changed. But after some seconds, because these background calculations are actually triggered some seconds later, now you see it's automatically changed to 30. And that is now the background calculation. And as well, if I'm going back to my expense request, you can see the other two calculations as well here. Here is where we've used the aggregation. So we aggregate the numbers from down here to the master item. So that's the total, this 30 twice, and one of this was paid by credit card, so I don't have to pay that back to the employee. That's why it's 30. So it's this one. That's the aggregation. Metadata inheritance is configured here on this column here. So see now, the status is created, and all my files down here are created as well. Now, if I would submit that here, or I can also show you if I would delete one of the items, just delete it like this. Then it takes a couple of seconds again, and these numbers here are recalculated as well. So that's the, now you see item has been changed, okay, reloaded, and now we have only 30 left. So that was done by the aggregation, and actually it was triggered because I deleted an item down here. So no form, that's why it has to be done in the background. Otherwise you would have wrong data if you just do it in the form. Now if I would go and submit it, okay, the status has been changed to submitted. And also down here, as you can see, my file also got the status submitted automatically. If I would revert it back, say no, and back, my status is missing information line manager, and it takes another couple of seconds and all my sub items, now you see missing information line manager is also on the sub list. Now it's pretty cool. Now let's have a look into the backend, how this is configured. If we look into Solution Studio, here it's my dossier, my master and my sub lists. And if we go and click on the list, here in the background we see our columns, and some of the columns are bold, and those are the ones which have configuration. But first of all, let's look at the total cost column. If you open up the field editor, then you see the normal SharePoint off-the-box column editor. But up here we have an additional tab which is called Values, and that's the skybow configuration about the calculation of these fields. And here, if you click on the drop-down, you can see that in that case, since I'm on a sublist, I only have the two options, expression, which is the calculated version, or inherit. In my case, I've chosen expression, and here is my little expression, which is quite simple. It just checks if the type is allowance, and that's the short notation of if. So this question mark is saying, okay, that's my condition. If it's true, do this, and with this it's else, do that. So if it's allowance, then multiply kilometer with kilometer allowance, otherwise just return the receipt costs. That's it, only that one. And every time, and that's the important part here, the placeholders, if one of these placeholders changes, then it's recalculating. So if you change the cost, if you change the allowance or the type, it will recalculate the field. So we register the dependencies here, and once the field is changing, it automatically triggers the recalculation. So that's the way how you can calculate a column. And like I said, you can really do that even on a term column, on a lookup column, doesn't matter, date, number, any column, you can calculate it. And also in here, with this expression builder, also here I have another webinar about the expression builder possibilities. You could even switch to function code and put in your whole JavaScript logic as you like, or just make something simple like this. So you really, it's very flexible what you can do here using basically JavaScript with placeholders. So every column, just choose expression and then type in any dynamic expression. The second thing that we see here is the request status, which was the field that was inherited. So if I click on that one, that's even easier. So inheritance and aggregation is very easy to configure. We go to values, we select inherit, and we can see I have two lists to inherit from, and those are the two lists where I have a lookup to. So cost center would be one, but we take the master list, and then we can choose from the fields. And it's just the status field, or we can just inherit the same type of fields. So I have to add an additional column and then just choose the column to inherit. Let's do that real quick for the face. So now we just have the status. Let's add a new column called request face. The choice field, it has to be the same type. Theoretically, the values don't matter. I can leave that one because we will anyway inherit them. For the choice field, it doesn't matter. Add to the default view, no default value, just as it is. Okay. Then we go here, select values, inherit, choose the face, and that's it. Just click OK, and now it's automatically recalculating right now for all the existing ones. So if we go in, we refresh here, let's see here. Refresh. You see faces here, it already has preparation. And yeah, so it's already calculated. Once I would change the face, it will also be recalculated. So that's as easy as this, and my values are inherited. Then the last thing we have is here on the expense list. So the master list, if we go here into the things in the background, we can also see that the two columns are calculated. Those were the two aggregated columns, the total. If we click on that one, since we are on a master list, we have some more options. We can still inherit from another lookup list. We can make it calculated, or we have these 5 aggregation functions. We can take an average, a min, a max, a count, maybe count the number of sub-items, of tasks, of receipts, or I was taking the total. So it's the total, then you choose the sub-list, in my case the receipts, and then the field with the field you want to summarize. And that's it again. You just choose that one, click OK, and it calculates the values. Now we do have an additional filter option here, which is optional. As you can see, it's empty in my case, because it just takes all the costs from the receipts that are attached. I have this second column, which is saying total paid by employee. So this is like a sum, and here we do have this filter applied. And it's quite easy to understand, because I want to filter out all the receipts which were paid by a credit card, right? So I can simply say in here with this camel query builder from us, here is my criteria. So paid by company's credit card should be equal to no. So only count or sum up the receipts which are not paid by credit card. And that's my simple query. Here you see how it's built. You could also, here from here you cannot test it. That's not going to work. But that's my query for this field, and that's automatically calculating only the ones which are set to no. And now it would also recalculate if you change that field here. So if I go back to my expense, where is it? Here, in here, and now down here, now we have 30 twice. And if I would now go in and change this here and say, okay, no, that was paid by credit card, save. This one here would, because of that filter, it knows, oh, now it's not no anymore, so it should not count it. And after a couple of seconds, let's see, it's 0. So this is automatically calculated in the background as well. Good. Yeah, and last but not least, the fourth option would be here, but I will make a separate webinar for this topic. But just real quick, we have triggered actions here on each list, and you could theoretically go here, say a new trigger action, calculate anything, I don't know. Okay, when should this be done? On added, updated, or both? Let's say, yeah, always do it. Okay, on both. And then here in the actions, you could take our update item action, choose the current list, the current ID here. You can choose that from the expression builder. And then down here, now you can calculate each field. So all the fields that you see here, you can calculate in one place. So maybe if you have like, if you need to calculate like 20, 30 columns, it's maybe easy to do here instead of going to each column and configure the calculation. So it really depends on your scenario for the calculated columns. So you could do that here as well. Yep, that's it. Thank you for your time, and yeah, have a nice evening.